Did it do it? This meeting is being live streamed.
I think that's it.
Setting up your webinar.
This is the May 23rd, 2023 meeting of the node.js loaders team.
Being live streamed.
I think that's it.
Setting up your
That's
webinar.
it.
Cool.
This is the May 23rd, 2023 meeting. Oh, and yeah, you have to close the YouTube window on your screen.
Oh, I was like, where's this echo coming from? Sorry, I didn't even know it was still open. Okay, so we have Jeffrey, Jacob, Isaac, and Antoine. And I think we wanted to discuss the two open pull requests that we have, which are make CGS load via the ESM loader, and also a utility for programmatically registering loaders. Should we start with the register loader utility first, because it's the smallest and I think the one closest to being done?
Sure.
Okay. So what questions do you guys have / things to discuss?
Well, do you want to just start off with telling us where it stands? Like, I think it's something about adding test cases, but
yes,
beyond that.
So currently, we have some base test cases that cover like the most straightforward functionality. So like registering a loader, making sure that it is actually consumed on a subsequent import and things like that. So we know that in principle it works. And then we have, I think, 4 something test cases left to cover. And in the current implementation, the registered loader utility is synchronous using our atomics like crazy magic.
Okay. So what happened to the stuff about? Oh, but it still requires the loader tag to be passed in addition, and we're going to deal with that as a follow-up. Is that
yes
where we left off with that? Okay.
Yes. So I think last we chatted, you were suggesting adding the don't land on any line for at least for a couple weeks. For the subsequent pull request to hopefully address needing the command line flag. We believe that we can avoid this limitation by merging the 2 ESM loaders that we had created as part of offloading.
Yeah, merge the 2 classes back together. Yeah.
Yeah. And then
okay.
Just in time spin up the worker.
Yep. Okay.
I'm curious, what is this? You said the loaders tag thing. What was that referring to?
Sorry, the what?
Flag.
Flag.
The command line flag.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Right. So it would have to, you would have to opt in with a flag in order to have register loaders available.
Yes.
Yeah, it's because we did like a bunch of optimizations so that we don't like spin up this extra thread unless -- loader is passed on the command line. Well, now it's like biting us because that means you can't, like if you didn't register any loaders on the command line, then this extra thread doesn't exist. So then when register loader like wants to add something to that thread, it can't because it's not there already. So we have to like kind of refactor the whole startup process where like we still don't want to spin up that thread if there are no loaders registered, but we want to be able to like
just in time
dynamically start it up. Yeah, like the same thing that would have happened if you passed the flag.
Cool.
But that's like complicated enough that it was like, let's just get this working first and then do that as a follow-up and then release them together. Was the idea.
And I know what needs to be done for the follow-up. So hopefully will not take another 9 months or however long off threading.
Yeah, that part feels pretty straightforward. I
Yeah.
mean, part of me wonders, and maybe this is heresy, but like I wonder if we need the dash dash loader flag once we have this API, because like people could implement loaders where it's just like dash dash import
Yeah,
TS
I mean,
load, TS node, and then it's like the same thing as like all you would do, like say it was a like loader.mjs is a single file that exports the hooks.
Mhm.
It could just be like the register loader, maybe in addition to taking a string to a file, could take a JavaScript object with the 4 hooks. And then it's like, then we just avoid all this complication with the 2 threads and all the rest. We get to get rid of of a flag that we don't need, etc.
Well, aside from reducing the number of flags that we have in the project, is there any like impetus or harm in having the flag? Like if somebody wants to use the flag instead of handling it programmatically?
I think there's enough code in the wild that is using that flag that removing it is would be pretty disruptive. But I think what you're suggesting is not necessarily like it must be removed. It's problematic to be there, and more like, do we really need it like in the fullness of time, or are we going to kind of guide people towards like, look, just use import, have import do all the work. And it can do on-thread work. It can register a loader for off-thread work. Like it can do anything you need. That's the direction I would go. I don't really see much benefit of using the loader flag at that point. And then, heck, I mean, maybe then the this thing is experimental turns into this thing is deprecated, use import instead, and it's still just a noisy kind of evolutionary step.
I mean, we don't need to like consider it right now. It was just something that kind of occurred to me as we were talking about this.
Yeah, I certainly wouldn't use it. I mean, it's compared to using import and a blessed function that you just call and you pass whatever you need to it. Like the loaders, the loaders kind of command line interface, I think is sort of a weird duck, right? It kind of always has been. I understand why, but like import and register loaders or register hook, whatever is a much nicer kind of ergonomics.
But a big difference I could see is if you pass dash dash loader, you guarantee that it's not gonna run code on the main thread, but that's not really true because there's the global preload.
Right.
Yeah, but if we take that out,
yeah,
or at least take out the sloppy script aspect of it. I mean, I guess I should caveat what I said earlier. I don't think you'll be able to pass just like an object with functions, because it's not like we can it's not like set timeout or something where you can like drag the scope from the main thread over into the loaders thread. Like you probably have to pass like a string of the source code of your loader, and if you're going to do that, you might as well pass like the reference to the file where it's saved. So then it's just, it doesn't save you all that much. You still need like 2 files, one that's just like a one-liner that says register loader and then your loader file. And if you're going to do that, then it doesn't make that much difference. But it's more like a UX question. Like, will it make it easier for loader authors as well as users if there's like just one way to do things versus 2 ways that are basically equivalent,
I mean, I think adding an extra file to loader authors management, and like what they have to deploy is pretty inconsequential compared with adding. I know you and I had this conversation on GitHub, right? Like, or maybe in Slack or somewhere, like adding it's a much bigger command line is much bigger, right? Because now that's like another thing that people have to do everywhere versus just like
the DX of application users application authors is much more important than the DX or UX of loader authors. Like there's only relatively a handful of loader authors. So
right.
Yeah,
And-
so having them
and
like
it's like
need
you're-
to write
if-
some
if-
wrapper is yeah, it's probably pretty trivial.
And if
I-
you're shipping a loader today, and especially with just kind of the experimental nature of the loader and hooks API, like you've got wrappers upon wrappers already. Like one more is really, it's fine. And especially if it's kind of like a much easier thing to reason about, where it's like, this is the import script and this is the loader that runs off thread. That's it. I think that's a huge improvement, personally.
I use loaders quite a lot in my own projects, and especially for npm scripts involving tests. I have tons of loaders that do like individual things like stubbing, CSS module imports and stuff like that. So like that's very unwieldy to have to like specify all of those things in a single line in package.json. So I imagine anybody who's using these like substantially will probably not use the flag.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, maybe it's something we can
Portability,
add
the
to
flag
our
might be nice.
to-do list on the loaders readme
Okay.
as something to look into, but it's much lower priority than a lot of those other things.
I know,
Sure.
like having just jumped through a bunch of these hoops to try to get TS Node working with off-thread loaders, being able, like the number one thing in any like really complicated loader that you're doing, like TS Node or like Node Tap or whatever, is like try to get as little as possible on the command line and then have as much of it in JavaScript as possible. So like specifying the import entry point that figures everything out and figures out what the loader needs and how to load it and everything else. Like, oh my goodness, like that's the big challenge, right? If you look at like what TS Node -ESM does, it's like spawning multiple levels of child processes and calculating a config string to pass to the loader on the command line. And it's like, it's all just because it needs to like read your TS config and set up the parser and everything. So yeah, like moving that into an import.mjs or something is I can't imagine anybody's going to complain about that. That's, I think, what everybody wants.
Well, they're all going to complain that we broke the API once this flag disappears. But
yeah, I think but that's the thing. Like it can stick around in a deprecated state as long as we want. And I think what we'll see is, I predict that what we'll see is like any projects that aren't just abandoned, they probably will keep around support for that loader. Yeah. Or they'll migrate relatively swiftly.
Well, and the end user could easily make the wrapper themselves, because like some old project that's abandoned, you just write a one-liner JavaScript file and call it via -- import, you know?
Yeah.
All right. So then where we left off. So we need to write the test cases. And
I'm pretty sure there will be no implementation that needs to be added to support the test cases. We just want to have the test cases to have something to point to say that we are certain that this does in fact work.
Okay. Okay, great.
Cool.
We could also have the few test cases that will not work when there's no flag passed. So we also have we know what is left.
Oh,
to
when
do.
there's no -- loader flag passed.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I think we
Yeah.
have a test case for that. If not, then yes, we should definitely have that. We did account for it, and the register loader throws when no whatchamacallit is supplies. If no flag is supplied. Cool.
Nice.
So any like questions on the API or anything to pick over there?
I have one last annoying question. Do we want to call it register loader? I know that's what I've been calling it for years now, but I wonder. No, I was gonna say like we could call it like register hooks or register customizations or something like that, and then it's not specific to module loading. But I guess it has to be specific to module loading, because this is what you're loading to be in that loaders thread because it's specific to module loading, whereas like something to do with the REPL or source maps or whatever would presumably not be like in a separate thread. So it would probably be some other API for loading those kind of customizations.
I think we could go a little bit more generic if we wanted to, because this lives on the module submodule. So if we said like register customization, it would be specific to module.
I mean,
Is there,
maybe,
I mean, maybe this is,
maybe we
I would
should.
say like, is there anything else that you'd want to put in this that is not currently covered by dash dash loader? Right? Like, or is it literally just because if it's only and only ever going to be like a JavaScript API equivalent to the current dash dash loader command line interface, then register loader, I think, is the correct name for it.
Well, but if we get rid of that flag, then it's not like, then there's not as much of a reason why it needs to match the name.
Sure. I mean, but I think it's a good name. Like for that thing, it's a good name. The question that I'm kind of proposing is, and I don't have an answer, is like, what else would you want to do there besides registering a loader? Like, I don't know. Nothing comes to mind. But
I mean, we could just call it register.
Well, I'm thinking
because that's like what a lot of historical ones have been called, like Babel /register, CoffeeScript /register, etc.
Yeah.
Well, that
TS Node does the same thing.
Using though, because isn't there already something in Node for register? Isn't there like dash dash register?
No, I mean,
or is that dash dash?
Dash require.
Okay.
It's dash dash require, but it's used commonly as with the shorthand dash R, and everybody named their module register. So you see dash R package name /register, and then people started to think that R is short for register. I don't know. Humans are weird.
But I think this API would be import register from module. So I don't think it would be that confusing. Like no one's going to mix it up with require.
But would we have anything else that we would want to register? Like I think we had been talking about previously, like overriding or something, some built-ins like on FS. I think.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Miel wanted something like that.
File system customizations hooks into that. Source map customizations, REPL, like tab completion, that type of stuff. Error messages, error handling, all those things. But those aren't like module things. Like, well, some of them are. I guess like source maps would be, but like.
But you could just run a lot of those things. Like basically, all of those things are either something that would be done in the loader because they need to be done on the module loading thread, or there's something that would be done in whatever is registering that loader, right? So if I wanted to say like, hey, I want to globally just like enable source maps and ensure that source maps are enabled anytime you're using this imported, module loader hook thingy. I could just call process.set source maps enabled in my import script, and then also register my loader. Like having hooks into like overriding node built-ins, I feel like that should probably be something that a module loader hook can do, right? Like, and that's maybe a whole other conversation. Is like, can we have the loader API, the loader hooks API, detect when node:/fs is being loaded, and then provide some other thing instead?
Yeah, I mean, I think what Mael was asking for was not to, because I don't think he wants the challenge of like, replacing the entire file system. Yeah, it's right. More like, just like we provide the resolve and load hooks where, you're not replacing the entire module loading system. You're just like putting some custom code in there, some key spots where you might want custom things to happen. But like there are plenty of things we don't allow to be customized, like the process of reading the file from the disk and things like that, But I mean, I guess the other question is like, even in the current implementation of register loader, say we added a new hook that was like, I don't know, custom read file or whatever, just to pick something arbitrary, so something that would go on the file system. And say say that which should be run on the main thread, like the customized version of it should be on the main thread rather than on the loaders thread. I think we could, even in our current setup, we could be like, oh, don't have this hook run on that on the loaders thread, run it over on the main thread for whatever reason, right?
Yes, I'm
Yeah,
thinking
that's
that-
kind of where I was coming from. Anything is either in the import or in the loader hook file.
But
Sorry, go
I'm
ahead.
thinking if we want to have something behave a little bit differently like that, maybe we should have a separate utility exported on module. So like we would have register loader, and then we would have like register FS utilities or something.
Well, or import register from FS, like it would be, it wouldn't have to necessarily be related to module loading. I think the source apps are part of the module namespace, but I think that could probably go in here, and maybe that would go. Source map stuff could just happen on the loader thread. I mean, I don't know. REPL, I think, has its own namespace too, so it could be the same thing. Like we could just use this pattern everywhere. Import register from whatever namespace they want to customize.
Oh, that's an interesting take. So wherever I am, whether I'm on the module thread or somewhere else, I could import register from FS and then provide some like override functions that can call the default if they decide they don't want to do their multi-patching.
I don't think it would work from the loaders thread because that's
well,
like
it
its own
wouldn't matter.
environment.
Yeah, it would
But
it would
like,
only
yeah,
affect the
like
loaders thread. But yeah,
say TS node, for example, wants to add tab completions to the REPL. I don't know if we have a REPL namespace, but say we did, you would do like -- import TS node / register, and then that, or TS node / whatever, TS node loader, whatever they call it. And then that would be like 2 lines. One would be like, or whatever, 4 lines, import register from module, import register from REPL, and then
call them both. Yeah.
Then call one, then call the other for the module customizations and the REPL customizations.
Another case where I could see this being super useful is in error handling. This has sort of been my whatever pebble in my shoe for the last 10 years. But like we want to get rid of domains. They're weird. They have side effects. Performance is terrible. Yada yada yada. But like, there's not really anything else that does that kind of job very well. And the REPL itself actually still uses it. So this is currently a problem for TS node. Because once you load domains, like a bunch of other stuff doesn't work, right? You can't even call process dot, what is it? Set uncaught exception handler callback, some super long name. It would be really super nice to be able to have some kind of way to like register global error handling in a way that's somewhat more like feels more like a global hook in the way that the loader hook does, and is not quite so like exclusive, right? So like right now, if you want to do interesting error handling in a test framework or a REPL or something like that, or even just a server, you have to make some pretty complicated decisions about, whether this is an error that I can handle. Is there some other handler? So I need to like get out of the way and let it handle it, or is this something where like I should let the process crash? And the tools for doing this today are pretty limited. So you're basically limited to like this process set uncaught exception handler callback.
And there's also that error dot prepare stack trace, which is also a really weird API.
Yeah, I mean, that's a JavaScriptism. We can't do much about it. Take it up with TC39 or V8 or whoever. But then also, the other thing is still like, you just have to override process.emit, process.on, and process._really exit. And like, that's gross. And so there's cases right now where like, it does work as long as you have exactly one thing that's trying to get into that flow. But the minute you have like, both TS node and async hook domains both in play, it gets really super complicated.
Yeah, then you
So-
need something like we have with loaders where there's chaining.
Right. So having some kind of like similar to the loader hooks API, like a chainable error handling thing, I could see being super useful. I don't know what core module that would live on, but like, I mean,
We
it's
could
kind
just
of
create
like
a new one.
process. Yeah,
Create
sure,
register from errors or create, from process, whatever.
Yeah,
But-
it is kind of related to process stuff, and I think there's sort of a family of processing. There's another thing like making sure that you handling, or is it like if you spawn a sub process and then you want to make it look like it's the foreground process, you need to, like, if you then get a sig hop, you need to pass that to the child process, wait for the child process to exit with that exit code, and then exit with the same exit code or the same signal. And this is another thing where like it works as long as exactly one process is as exactly one system is doing it. And the minute you have multiple things doing it, it gets really complicated. Yeah, so having chainable loaders for all this stuff would be great. And I think import register from module and then import register from other thing, like that's actually really, really kind of sweet.
Well, in the interest of not running out of time, let's talk about the other PR. I guess, well, or we could talk about the general issue of the whole load hook returning common JS source. First off, would this PR that Antoine has in progress solve that? And is it like, close enough to being ready that we should just finish the Antoine PR? Or is it like, is Antoine's PR like, yeah, this is like getting rid of the CJS loader. It's a major refactor. It could take a long time. So therefore we should solve the bug in a more limited attempt and then come back to the bigger effort that Antoine kicked off.
I think, I mean, I'm new to this, the modern module system in Node, but I think my take, having kind of like started to scratch the surface of this, and not knowing about Antoine's API, Antoine's PR, was like, seeing, okay, I'm going to need a thing that does this, I'm going to need a thing that does this. And then I saw Antoine's PR, I was like, oh, this is all the stuff I was like making a list of having to go do.
So even if you were going to do the isolated version, it would be Antoine's PR.
I think so. Or a not as well informed version of it, and probably take longer. So I'm gonna turn my attention to just sort of writing a bunch of writing like a little dummy transpiling example, and trying to kind of put Antoine's PR through the paces and see where it falls over, and hopefully get some decent test coverage out of that.
There's a repo, github.com/node.js/ it's either loaders test or test loaders, one or the other, that has a bunch of just what it sounds like. The ones that are most up to date are the CoffeeScript loader and the HTTPS loader, because those are the ones that are in the Node docs as examples. So like they should be, the ones in that repo should be identical to the ones in the docs, but just as runnable files. So you could use those if that helps. CoffeeScript is a lot simpler than TypeScript, but it's also a real thing and not like a dummy, like made up for testing thing. So it made for a really good test case.
Yeah, but there's probably not a lot of edge cases. So if the goal is to break the PR in as much ways as possible, or maybe we need to write something. I don't know if we have a test suite for CGS edge cases.
Well, are we even up to that point yet? I thought we were just going to get it to work first.
There are a few stuff that are not working, but well, I haven't tested the CoffeeScript loader, but it's mostly working for if you're not doing anything crazy. Like
okay, so we are. I didn't realize it was that far along. Okay, well if it's that close, then yeah. Are all the tests passing?
No, probably not.
It's not a ton of code either. Like it's not this is not a ding on Antoine. This is actually a compliment. Like it's not a tremendous refactor. I don't feel like it's super high risk, and it's mostly additive. So I'm sure something
awesome.
broke, but
Yeah,
it's just,
there are
a lot of moving parts, but it's not.
Well, and would
horrible.
it solve the problem of like, for example, like TS Node would no longer need to use require dot extensions?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, that
My
seems like the
PR
goal.
doesn't support required extension, so here you go.
Okay. Well, then I guess full steam ahead. And
Yeah,
congrats.
one of the areas that I'm going to be looking that occurred to me to like, I had kind of my sensors going off about like to go poke at is making sure that things do interoperate with like existing common JS loaders that override require extensions, and that you don't get into a problem if you have, for example, like a mix of some code doing one thing and some code doing the other, or going from ESM to CJS to back to ESM to back to CJS, all of that, crazy annoying like situations.
I mean,
Yeah, I haven't tested that at all. So.
I would also say that like, well, I mean, required extensions is extremely deprecated. Like we could, when this lands, we could just have something just to make your life simpler, where like when a loader is registered, if required extensions is used, it throws an error, or vice versa. If something is registered on required extensions and then someone calls register loader, that throws an error, and just like they're mutually exclusive for now until we remove required extensions, something to that effect,
Required extensions is basically replaced by loaders, right? We need a resolve.
Well, once Antoine's PR lands, it would be.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
So we would need a resolve.
But it's been around for almost 10 years, so it's not something we should really remove quite, cavalierly.
No.
I think the problem is like, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
What I'm saying is maybe we can facilitate the transition, because I think there are probably these things. I'm wondering if there is some type of code mod type thing that we can offer where we say, hey, you have these things registered, and we are going to translate them for you into a loader. This will exist for the next major version, and then we will remove it, in which point, if you haven't ported over your require extensions, then we'll blow up.
Yeah. I mean, we could also just like, the most user-friendly would be make it actually work. Like something that currently uses required extensions is automatically converted into a load hook loader. But
not working
but
like that, right?
I mean, I don't know how easy, like if that's easy, I guess why not? Because then the transition becomes really easy for people. But if that's a lot of work, it's probably not worth the effort because required extensions is deprecated, But
well,
I guess it's a question of how easy it could be.
We would have to spec, like, for example, if you have HTTP example.com/file.js, does it fall under the .js extension, or do we just take the file URLs?
Well, there's the other problem that anything past the required extensions is common JS code that's expecting to run on the main thread. So would it be able to run in ESM in the loader thread? Like I have a feeling this might not be able to work or be made to work easily, but that would feel like the ideal solution. But yeah, if that's hard at all, some kind of friendly error message seems reasonable to me. I don't know.
I think so my sense is that making it just work, like if you add a require extensions as a version node dot 20 dot whatever, we'll just convert that into a loader, a CJS loader hook. Like that seems very difficult. And the mutual exclusive thing is sort of appealing but it's also more complexity, and I think it's going to end up being somewhat disruptive just because there's loaders in the wild today that use require extensions and loader hooks because that's the only way to do it. And if they, you want to make the transition as easy as possible. So I think like saying it's effectively mutually exclusive in the sense that your require extensions are a no-op if you have a CJS loader, might be fine, but like,
I guess the question is like, that's only okay if it doesn't appear broken to users.
yeah,
Like if it just
exactly.
silently stops working, that might be worse than erroring. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
If it
Yeah,
could error but not crash, I guess that's another option. Like make it a warning. Like, you registered both required extensions and a load hook. The load hook will take precedence and required extensions will not be used. And it's just a warning that's printed. So then it's
well,
like,
and it require
it's not like
extensions
they have to
is still,
downgrade their version of Node all of a sudden. They can still use whatever, TS Node or whatever until TS Node upgrades. But
the require extensions is needed though if your load hook doesn't return source.
Hmm.
Which it can't do today.
But we could delay
on my
that.
PR, on my PR, it assumes that it will return source. And I guess it's a breaking change, so maybe we indeed need to support both type of
figure that
loaders.
out.
But could we delay the require extension, like dealing with that problem until after the loaders have run? And then if there is a source, we do something. If there isn't a source, we do something else.
A require extension can be added at any time. Like we can't really know when they're going to be added.
Well, I think what he's suggesting is like if your load hook does not return source code, then we go, okay, I'm going to need to read the file system and then run some, run the require extensions on it to load it. Whatever state they're in when I get there, just like we do today for CommonJS. And if you gave me source, okay, cool, I'm not going to use require extensions. Like, just ignore those. And then if a loader adds both, all right, we'll use the hook if the hook gave us source, and if it didn't, we'll fall back to require extensions. And then the failure mode is still, if neither one happened, then the failure mode is just what it is today, which is we try to parse TS as JavaScript and it doesn't work.
I have to go into my appointment, but it was a pleasure chatting with you guys. And Isaac, thank you for stepping up. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for
feel free to keep chatting. But see you guys.
Of course.
Bye, Jeffrey.
Bye.
Before I forget, Antoine, how soon-ish do you anticipate your pull request being ready?
As I said on the OP, I think I need help on so writing the tests, of course. And then there are questions or I guess choices that we have to make.
Okay, well, the reason I'm asking is because I was planning to do the follow-up to register loader basically like next week. But that would probably have quite a lot of conflict. I haven't had a chance to look through your pull request yet, but I see that you make a decent amount of changes to ESM loader. So that would create conflicts there. So I don't want to like flip the table on you. So I'm wondering if I can get this done quickly. If I'll do that next week, and then I can jump over onto this pull request and help you.
Sure. I mean, it should be okay because most of the changes are in translator.js, and I don't think register loader is gonna touch this file.
Okay, cool. Okay, that was my only.
Require import register from node : module kind of makes it sound like I'm registering a module. I don't know. Like, it feels like that should be the thing to like define. I don't know. Maybe I'm overthinking this. The bike shed.
Hmm.
I'm sure this will be a lively discussion and not a total waste of time.
It's like shedding, literally.
Yeah, but yeah, we can discuss that. Do we have anything else? Not that I don't want to discuss that, just we move on to this other thing. Do we have anything else that we urgently need to discuss for the Antoine's PR? Make CGS load from ESM loader.
So is it correct that I can count on you, Isaac, to add some tests to that?
Yes,
PR?
I will be trying to get this thing to work. And my goal is actually to have like a TS node / import that works like as soon as possible. Or even just get rid of some of the require extensions usage within TS node / ESN, and just kind of see how far I can get with that, and write some just examples, which I kind of started doing as I was reading this PR this morning, just to kind of see like what it's actually doing, because it's hard to understand it just by reading a diff.
Yeah, I agree.
We should have pretty decent test coverage already, though, from our CGS tests, no? Because if this is mostly a transparent change, then when we run those tests, shouldn't they just work?
Well, yeah. So the first step of kind of getting those tests, leveraging this, will be converting all the require extensions tests to use a loader hook instead.
Okay.
And then also trying out some, trying to actually use it outside of Node in more real world programs, and seeing like, okay, what would the lift be to do this in TS Node, and does it work?
Yeah. I don't know if we're about to get kicked off the Zoom. I think there's a meeting that starts immediately after this one. But just time check, FYI.
Yeah, at least from the YouTube stream.
Hmm.
So we have a couple of failure on the test, the current test. In case you were wondering, I'm running it, and currently it says 13 failures, which is not too bad.
That's great. Holy crap. When we did the off threading, we had hundreds.
Yeah.
This is a picnic.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, sounds like we have our plan of attack and we're good to go.
So you're following up with the register loader contributor, because
Yeah.
they haven't responded. So maybe we need to take over the PR if that's okay with them.
Yeah, I already chatted with him, and he said he's fine with me pushing commits. I pushed
Nice.
one that got it like working, and then I'll add the test cases if he doesn't get to them. I'll add them like this weekend or something.
Perfect.
Cool.
All right.
We just have to decide on a name. All righty.
Something on Slack, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yep.
Cool. Well, go team.
Thanks.
See you guys later. Bye.